Bezos Hashem, Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parashat Mishpatim, Shonas Tov Shir Pei Beis. The student of the Baal Shem Tov that told us, Yaakov Yosef, says a beautiful parable to explain, to introduce a Parashat Mishpatim. There was a man who was elected to become the Rosh HaKol, the leader of the community. And after the election, they made a big Suda, a big feast, and then everyone left the house at night to go home. And who walks ahead, who walks in front of everyone? That is the Rosh HaKol. He walks in front of all the people, he leads the people. But in front of him was standing the man holding the torch, so he can see where to go. But the Rosh HaKol says, "What are you doing standing in front of me? I'm the one that has to stand in the front." And he starts to beat him and knock him and sends him to the back. But then the Rosh HaKol walks in darkness. He has no light, and he can fall into the pits and stumble on the stumbling blocks. Because you need somebody to light you the way in front of you, to go ahead of you. And by walking ahead of you with a light, you are able to see the way that you are going. So this is the idea, the beginning of the Parashat. It says, Eile HaMishpatim, these are the juridical laws, Asher Tosim Lifneihem, which you have to put in front of you. The laws of the Torah have to lead you. They are a light in your life. And by going in the guidance of the Torah, by going in the way the Torah wants you, in all the facets of life, in the monetary laws, in business, in the shul, every facet of life is led by the Torah, then you are being led by the light, Asher Tosim Lifneihem. And don't think that I know better than the Torah. Don't say, I don't need you to light the way. I know my own, I can lead my own way. But a person has negias. A person sometimes is not able to see the truth. Where the Torah will lead you in front of you, Asher Tosim Lifneihem, then you are able to appreciate the truth of the Torah and the way the Torah will lead you in life. Rashi starts a parasha with a question. Rashi asks that the end of last week's parasha in Yisroi, it ended with the Mizbeach. Hashem said, Mizbeach Adomo Taseli, please build a Mizbeach Adomo, which will be an altar to sacrifice korbanos on top. And then we start Ve'ela Mishpatim, and these are the laws of the Torah. And we go into a whole new subject of monetary laws, the laws of a slave, how to treat a slave, as well the laws of if somebody digs a pit along the way and people's property gets damaged. Somebody goes along with a horse and cart and falls in the pit, how much do you have to pay? If I give something to somebody for safekeeping and he was negligence, how much does he pay? Does he take responsibility for theft? So these are the halachos of Shomrim, the halachos of monetary laws. How is it connected to the laws of the Mizbeach? So again, the end of last week's parsha says, Mizbeach Atomo Taseli, build the Mizbeach where you bring a korban, and then Ve'ela HaMishpatim, and we start with monetary laws. And the question is, what's the connection between the two? So Rashi says, because in the Beis HaMikdash, we know that there was a Kodesh HaKadoshim, there was a menorah, lechem aponim, a mizbeach, but there was one other room. There was a room in the Beis HaMikdash called the Lishkas HaGozis. In the Lishkas HaGozis there was 71 Sanhedrin. 71 judges, Dayonim, who sat in judgment. People who would come to Beis HaMikdash would not only come to be Makriv Korbanos, they would come as well as if they had a machloikus, if they had an argument, if they have a monetary conflict with somebody else, they would come to the Sanhedrin in order to settle the machloikus that they have with their neighbor. Somebody stole from them, injured them, damaged their property, so they would come to Beis HaMikdash to be judged by the Sanhedrin. So because the Sanhedrin was in the Beis HaMikdash, and the place of the Sanhedrin was opposite the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash, So same too in the Torah, Hashem puts a Mizbeach, the Parsha Mizbeach, as well the Sanhedrin of Mishpat, Ve'ela Mishpatim, one next to each other. To teach us that in the Beis HaMikdash as well, one will be next to each other. The Sanhedrin will be placed next to the place of the Korbanos. So also Holy Gur Arya, the Maharal, I don't understand, but why Be'emoth does Hashem want the Sanhedrin to be next to the Mizbeach? That means we understand in the Torah Hashem mentions one next to each other. We know in the Beis HaMikdash Hashem wants it to be placed one next to each other, the Sanhedrin next to the Mizbeach. But what's the purpose, what's the reason why Hashem wants that the Sanhedrin should be in the Beis HaMikdash opposite the Mizbeach? Couldn't have been like anyone else. Everywhere else we have the juridical system, the legislature. Where is it? It's in another office, somewhere else, another building. You want to go to Mishpat, go to the court case. The high courts have their own building, their own offices. And rather Hashem doesn't want it to be somewhere else. Hashem doesn't want the Sanhedrin separate from the Beis HaMikdash. He wanted it to be in the Beis HaMikdash next to the Mizbeach. What's the purpose and what's the reason to this idea? So says the Holy Gur Arya, because the idea of Beis HaMikdash is to bring peace. Peace has two halves. There are two halves to peace. One is bein Odom Lamokum. A person, he did an Aveira, and Hashem is angry. There's a kitrug, there's a divide between him and his creator, the Ribono Shel Olam. So what does he do? He comes to the Beis HaMikdash with an animal. He does tshuva to Hashem. He needs makriv the korban to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem is mechapa, the korban is mechapa, and brings an atonement to the Aveira that he may have done. And now he's at peace between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and him. He has now found peace between Hashem, an atonement, a kapora through the korban. Because that's why he says korban is the same letters of lehit karev, to come close. Because through the korban, a person returns and comes close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But there is another idea to peace. There may be a machloikus between one person and his neighbor. There may be a machloikus between one person and his friend. And he's saying, you damaged my property, you stole from me. So how do we bring peace? They would as well come to the Beis HaMikdash, but not by the Mizbeach. They go to the Lishkas HaGozis. They will stand in front of the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin, they will bring a Mishpat Tzedek. They will bring justice. They will bring truth. And then you will know, whatever the verdict is, I know this is a true verdict. You accept it. And then you live in peace and harmony with your neighbors and your friend. So the Beis HaMikdash has one purpose. Beis HaMikdash is to bring peace to Am Yisrael. But there are two halves to this peace. There is one that we come to the korban and we bring peace between Avinu ben Yisrael Laviem Sheba Shemaim, between the nation of Yisrael and our Father in heaven. But there is this other part of peace. The other part of peace is bein Odom lechaveiroi, to bring peace between you and your friend. You as well came to Beis HaMikdash. It's not enough just to have peace between you and Hashem. You need as well to have peace between you and your fellow Jew. So there are two parts of peace that brings our entire peace is in the Beis HaMikdash. But says the Sefer Avnei Yozel continues with another nuance, another idea to this. Why the Sanhedrin, by the Beis HaMikdash? Because by all the goyim, all the nations of the world, in the secular laws, the civil laws of the secular world, they are all not considered has anything to do with religion. Well, somebody goes, hey, speed limit. He goes over the speed limit. That's to do with religion. There are all these civil laws. It's nothing to do with religion. It's separate from religion. You want religion? They go here. You want civil laws? You go to the court. It's separate. But Hashem wants to teach us by putting Ve'ele HaMishpatim next to the Mizbeach is to tell us that just like we understand that bringing a korban on the Mizbeach is Avodas Hashem, you are serving your Creator, The same too when you come to a mishpat, and when you have a judge, and the judge, the dayanim, tell you if you owe money, you don't owe money. If he gave you something for safekeeping, and you were negligent, you have to pay, you don't have to pay. When do you pay? How do you pay? All these halachas are not separate from Avodas Hashem. They are part of Avodas Hashem. And just like the Mizbeach, you understand it, Avodas Hashem. The same to our juridical system. The Jewish civil laws are as well Avodas Hashem. And this, the nations of the world are very difficult to understand and to appreciate. How can it be that the civil laws are just Torah Misinai, Parashat Mishpatim? The Eila Mishpat, the Chassam Sofer says, the Eila is Gematria 42, Mem base, because there are Mem base laws, civil laws. The Eila Mishpat, now we're going to start going through till the Parsha of Shvi'ah, so we have to keep Shmita. There are 42 civil laws. So these 42 civil laws, they are just Avodas Hashem, like the Mizbeach, like the Korban. There was once a student who left America, he came to Eretz Yisrael, and he was in a search to find spirituality. So he comes to Eretz Yisrael, he arrives in Yerushalayim by the Koisla Marovi. And there he's davening to Hashem, he's davening, feeling spirituality, a closeness to Hashem. And somebody tells him, you know, you want to appreciate what it is, the Torah, the Talmud. There's a yeshiva here across from the Koisla Marovi, across from the western wall, there's a yeshiva called Eisha Torah. And at 12 o'clock, there's going to be a class about the Talmud. Talmud Bavli is over 2,000 years old, and it's all sourced from the Torah that Moses received on Mount Sinai. He brought from the highest heavens from the Ribono Shel Olam. So you're going to have insight. If you want to hear the share, the class is starting at 12 o'clock. He comes to the Eisha Torah, he finds a class, he sits down, and the Maggid Sheh walks in. He opens the Gemara Bob Metzia, and what did he start? Af Chovtes, it says, Eilu Metzias Sheloi, Eilu Chayv Lahachriz. There are certain articles when you walk along the street that you can keep. But there are certain articles you have to publicize and try to return it to the owner. Ask a Mishnah, which ones can you keep and which ones you have to publicize to return to the owner. So as the Mishnah starts going into details, if it's something that's mass-produced and there's no identifying mark on it, then the person already gave up, you can keep it. If there's identifying marks on it, if there's simonim, then you have to try to find the owner. The owner will tell you the simonim, and then you will know he's the right owner. You verify with him, and you can return to him the article. And this man sitting in the class, and he's saying, this is religion, this is spirituality. He was looking, he didn't feel anything. This sounds like a lost and found office in the Tachna Merkazit of Eged in Yerushalayim. If you find something, do you return it? Do you not return it? How do you return it? When do you have to return it? What's this to do with religion? He's looking for something more mystical, something more as though with a feel spirituality. So he leaves his Eretz Yisrael and he travels to the Far East. Ooh, the Far East, something mystical in those. He went to the temples over there in the Far East in Asia, and there in the temple he shaves his hair, he wears his robes, the garbs, and he meditates and he mamash all the mystical ideas that there are over there in the temple and by the Far East. And then after 6 weeks they tell him, you know, the monk, he's walking from the temple to his house, and you can accompany him home, and on the way you can ask him questions. So he's walking, this monk, he's walking with him, asking questions along the way towards the house of the monk. And then they see a wallet on the street. And the monk, he bends down, he opens up, and he sees it's from an American tourist. So he takes out all the dollars, there's lots of dollars, takes it all up, stuffs it in his pocket, and throws away the wallet. And then the student remembers, maybe we should publicize. He says, maybe we should publicize. Try to find out who the owner is. There's a social security number in the wallet. We can try to find out who it is. So he says, no, if something is found on my way, this is on my way, and it was in front of me, it means it's for me, and it's his bad luck. And he kept the money. The boy turned around. He flew back to Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim. He went to Eishat Torah. He clapped on the beam and he said, Eilu metzias sheloi ve'eilu chayev la'achas. Now I appreciate the Jewish religion. Jewish religion is not just something spiritual in the synagogue, in the shuls, but it's something that covers our whole entire life. Everything is covered by the Torah, is guided by the Torah. Eila mishpat v'shet tosim lifnei. If you go to work, Choshen Mishpat, how do you lend money with ribbis, without ribbis, what's considered ribbis, and how to pay the workers, how do you pay them, so many halachos when you go to work, a whole Shulchan Aruch. You're at home, how to keep Shabbos, Yom Tov. Every facet of our lives is lit, illuminated by the Torah, that guides us in the Torah. Even the civil laws, when we go through the Parashat Mishpatim, we know that this as well is Torah, part of the religion. So that's why, says Avnei Ozel, that these laws have to be even placed next to the Mizbeach to teach us that they're both one, both united with the purpose of Avodas Hashem. Just, I would like to appreciate, because people don't generally appreciate the laws of Bein Adam Lachaveiroi. Bein Adam Lamokum is something that everyone appreciates. Matzah, Leila Seder, Yom Kippur, fasting. Of course, we appreciate and respect those laws. But why is it, Bein Adam Lachaveiroi, we don't always appreciate that much? And we don't respect the halachos of Bein Adam Lachaveiroi, of gezela and injuring and damaging other people's properties as much as Bein Adam Lamokum. And for example, if somebody, a crumb of chometz, everyone's very careful, there shouldn't be a crumb of chometz in the house. But as well, gezela, we have to be careful. There shouldn't be a crumb of gezela in our properties. And what we have, there was once a story, Rav Steinman, the Holy Rosh Yeshiva, he was once at home, his jumper was torn, it was a bit ripped. So his granddaughter was working in a place where they sew garments. So she took the jumper to the factory and she fixed the sweater of Rav Steinman. But when she brought it back, she realized that for a few days Rav Steinman's not wearing it. So she said, "But Zayda, why aren't you wearing the sweater that I fixed for you?" But he said, "I'm sure that you asked permission from the boss if you're allowed to use the machinery to fix my jumper. But did you pay for the thread that you used in order to fix and repair the tear in my jumper?" So she said to her, "Matayra Zayda, there's so many reels of thread, you can kilometers of thread. He doesn't care that I use a few centimeters." Says, "A few cents, you have to pay. If you didn't pay for it, then I cannot use it." And so he went. So she went back, she went to the owner, said that my Zayda wants to pay for the thread. He started to laugh, said, "Look at the warehouse, how many reels and kilometers of thread that we have." He said, "But nevertheless, he's not going to wear it if I don't pay for it." So he said, "How much?" He said, "Okay, put a shekel." She paid a shekel. She said, Zayda paid him a shekel for the thread, and then he used it. Not even having a crumb, nothing of gezela, of Bein Adam Lachaveiroi. We have to appreciate, why is it? Why do we not respect and appreciate the halachos of Genei or Mishpatim like we respect and appreciate the halachos of Bein Adam Lamokum? So the Saba of Kelm, the holy Simcha Zisel of Kelm, says as follows. V'hinei anachnu royim, he says, and I'll explain. He said as follows, that because the mitzvahs of Bein Adam Lamokum, we would have never thought of it ourselves. We would have never thought of it. We don't understand the mitzvahs, and we don't understand the reasons of the mitzvahs. I mean, let's say fasting on Yom Kippur, or shaking lulav and esrog on Sukkot, or matzahs. All these mitzvahs, it's Hashem commanding us, and we don't fathom the reason to these mitzvahs. We would have never come up with it ourselves. So because we don't understand what's behind the mitzvahs, so we realize there's great spiritual depth to these mitzvahs. This activates great spiritual energy. This mitzvahs is something, there are secrets and there is spirituality, and we respect it because we don't understand it, and because we appreciate this as something spiritual. But mitzvahs beinodam lechaveiroi, we think we understand. Not to murder? Of course not to murder. I understand why not to murder. Not to steal? I understand why not to steal. So because we think we understand the mitzvah, so it makes it look shallow. And we don't appreciate it as a mitzvah, as something spiritual. Because we think we understand it, we doesn't have any spiritual depth to that mitzvah. Not to murder, not to steal. These halachos, because we think we understand, we don't see any spiritual depth to the mitzvah like the Beinodom Lamokum. So therefore, says the Saba Mikelm, we have to know that the mitzvahs Beinodom Lachaveiroi have the same spiritual depth. They have the same spiritual energy that, like we have Beinodom Lamokum, like we know there's great secrets which we do not understand the depth to the mitzvah. The same to the mitzvahs Beinodom Lachaveiroi. When we go through the Parashat Mishpatim and we learn about the boir, we learn about the shomer, we learn about the nezikin, we have to know that it's not the way we understand. We are doing it because the Torah commands us to do it, and because the Torah commands us to do it, that's why we are keeping the mitzvahs. And if it's possible, I like to explain it with a little bit more depth, b'vakasha, in a little bit more depth, this idea to appreciate the mitzvahs b'nodol lachaveiroi. We know every country has has lawmakers. That means in America you got Congress. In England you got the Parliament, and in Israel it's the Knesset. Now, other than fighting and bickering, what's the purpose of these people, the lawmakers? What really should they be doing? They have to always introduce new laws, because the laws that we had with the horse and carriage are not the same laws like you have with cars. And when first cars came, you didn't need the license. There was no speed limit, because there was a few. Then, as the advance of technology, as the advancement of technology was taking place, we have to adapt the laws to relate to the new inventions that are being discovered and invented. And as the advancement of these inventions, we have to as well adapt the laws and change the laws and introduce the whole time new laws. There's an aeroplane. Now we know there's an aeroplane can fly. So we need new laws for aeroplane. Cars can speed. We need now new laws for speeding. You cannot use an old law book from 20 years ago, not even 1 year ago. Every year, every time has to be updated and introducing new laws to the law book. And the question is, how can it be Ve'ela Mishpatim? These are the laws. And when did we receive it? 3,300 years ago. And the first thing everyone asked, how can you live with a law book that never needs to be changed, that never needs to be adapted, never introducing new laws? No, Hashem said these are the Mishpatim, these are the laws that we have, and we live by these laws. All the Jewish laws is all sourced from the Torah. How is that possible? You cannot introduce a new law, and it's part of our animamin. Animam u'neshleimo shezoi sa Torah loitei muchlefes v'loitei Torah acheres. This Torah never be changed, and never bring a new law. Never introduce a new law to the Torah. How is that possible? The answer is because the goyim, the secular laws, is that they do not know. They keep on discovering new inventions in the nature. They suddenly discover there's electricity, and now we can build machines that work on electricity. Oh, so we have to now make new laws according to the discovery of electricity. And then they realize that a plane can fly. They discover that air can hold up a plane. So now we need a book of laws with the laws of aviation. So as they discover the potential and they keep on finding new discoveries that there lies in nature, then they have to as well introduce new laws to adapt to these new discoveries. But the Torah, the Heilige Bashefa, the Heilige Ribono Shel Olam, He created the world with all its potential in the first 6 days of creation. So He knows everything that we will discover throughout the generations. He already knows about it. You cannot shock the Ribono Shel Olam. You cannot find Him a new device and say, this wasn't this, you didn't know. Because everything is based, everything is discovery from the potential that there is that lies in the nature. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with all the potential. So when He writes a law book, He writes a holy Torah. The Torah can cover every single scenario and every single new device and inventions that we are going to find, that we are going to discover. Hashem already knew about it. And He wrote it in the Torah. So we just have to find how we can source the new discoveries and find it in the Torah, and the Torah will guide us and lead us along the way. But one more step is that it's even more. Hashem looked at the Torah and He'd fashioned the world, right? Hestakel boy raisa uboro alma. Explains the Brisker Rov. What does that mean? It means that Hashem looked at the Torah. What does it say in the Torah? Lo yisirtzach, do not murder. So Hashem wrote a Torah, Hashem created the world where a person has a capability to murder someone else. How can it be somebody can murder somebody else? Doesn't make sense. But because Hashem looked at the Torah, says, Lo yisirtzach. So then Hashem created the world where a person is capable of murdering someone else, and don't do it, it's a bad thing. Because the Torah says it's a bad thing. And the Torah said, Lo yisignoiv, not to steal. So Hashem created the world in a way where you able to steal, but don't steal. It's a bad thing because the Torah says it's a bad thing. Because the Torah said it's a bad thing to murder, it's a bad thing to steal. So Hashem created the world in a way where you're able to murder, but don't do it. It's a bad thing. Don't steal. It's a bad thing. Same to Kabed Savicho Vesimecho. Hashem saw that it says to respect your mother and your father. So Hashem created the world in a way where every person has a mother and a father. Could have been Hashem created the world in a way that I'm here, like Adam Rishon. He's there, he's created. But Hashem made the Shpia of mother and father in order that to keep the mitzvah of Kabed Savicho Vesimecho. So if so, the Brisker Rov says, and because the Torah said it's something bad, the world, we look at it as something bad. For example, if the Torah would have said that murder is something good, let's say the Torah would have said it's a mitzvah to murder, Hashem would have created the world in a way where murder is good. How? I don't know how. You murder somebody, comes back healthier, comes back better. So it's so therefore everything that we take for granted, we think we understand, it's only because Hashem fashioned the world in a way. But then the Torah said that it's something good, so therefore it's something good. And if the Torah would have said something bad, then it would have been something bad. So therefore, do we really understand why murder is not good? Do we really understand why stealing isn't good? Because really we don't understand. It really has spiritual depth to it. Because it's all based on the ideology of the Torah that Hashem fashioned the world and created the world in that manner. It's like somebody who sees a blueprint. He says, wow, this man who designed this blueprint of the building, he must be such a wise man, such a clever man. He knows exactly where all the sockets are, where the lighting is, where the plumbing is. So he says, no, the building was built based on the blueprint. The same too. When we see the Torah, we say, why? It makes so much sense not to murder, not to steal. The Torah makes so much sense in the world. We understand it. No, the world was designed according to the ideals of the Torah. So thank you very much for listening. May it be the Torah, the Mishpatim. We should realize that all the Mishpatim that we keep, all these civil laws, we should appreciate and know that the world was created because of our civil laws. The civil laws are holy. The civil civil law has spiritual depth, and then we will respect these civil laws. We will look at it as a mitzvah, like not to have a crumb of chometz. We as well won't have even a thread of gezela in our property. We will be zoich Be'ez Hashem, a Shabbos Shavuot, Shabbos Avochim, Ado Aleph, Be'ez Hashem Yisrael, V'shlichus Ado Marbim B'simcha, She'elu Kol Shabbos Shalom Avoirach.